How do I make my trading approach 100% mechanical? In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the processes I use to make my trading completely mechanical. If you're new to the channel, my name is Luke Burton. I've been trading the Forex markets for 9 years. So firstly, I start by having a mechanical entry setup. Now my setup is based on fractals coming into the market. So what are fractals? Well, if we look on the chart right now, I'm going to draw out a fractal. It is a low, high, higher low, and a higher high, followed by a move in the opposite way. And it's the same on the opposite side, a high, low, lower high, and lower low. So when price is trending, that is setting up a potential reversal, as long as this happens from a location where we could see a reversal from, which will be a previous sideways range. So now I'll just draw it here, high, low, lower high, and lower low, and I move in the opposite way. Now this is a fractal high and fractal low. Now fractals happen on all time frames. So if we can understand this pattern happening on a higher time frame, what we can do on the lower time frames is use exactly the same pattern to get involved as an entry. And this is how I can read the higher time frame moves coming into the market and then trade them on the lower time frame with exactly the same pattern. So let me take you through an example. So let's go up to the daily chart. So on the daily chart last week, we had price running above the swing high that we have here. We all know in NJT, when price runs a high, we don't always see a breakout. We're looking at how price runs the high. What comes next is really, really important. So what do we see on the higher time frames? Well, when we run that swing high that we have here, we can see that a fractal high has been created in the market. This is the most recent low, high, higher low, and higher high. So price is setting up for a reversal after we've taken out the swing high here. So when I'm on the higher time frames, I can already see that price is starting to slow down because we're getting candles that aren't continuing this bullish trend. So when I go onto the lower time frame, because a fractal set up in the opposite direction, I'm only going to be looking for selling opportunities. So now if we zoom out on our 15-minute chart, we can see the fractal high. These are the swing points on the higher time frame that we were just looking at. This is what the start of a big move always looks like. We're always going to create a fractal high and fractal low before a big move happens in the market. And this is because we need to see manipulation happening, or the banks need to manipulate price to create their buy to sell orders, which then the next big move can come from. So that's 1 week's worth of narrative for lower prices. So I only trade New York session, and I only trade my fractal setup during New York session because timing is an extremely important part of the market. Although we can see that big higher time frame move coming in, that's the higher time frame, but price is going to set up during the sessions because these are going to be the most liquid times where we can see the biggest moves happening in the market. So I'm always focused on New York session. So I'll take you through the entries that I took for the week. I don't trade on Mondays, I only trade 3 days a week. I trade Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So we already have our direction in the market. So all I'm doing, and this is the second part of my process, is I'm looking for my fractal setup before the sessions happened, or I'm looking for it in the session. So coming into New York session on Tuesday, the fractal high was printed before the session. So we get a low, high, higher low, and higher high. So I already know that this is already in play before the session's opened. So I have my narrative of lower prices, and I also have my 15-minute setup showing me that price wants to move lower as well. So the session opened and I just executed with a 10 pip stop, as I always do. And this is a trade that ended up moving in my direction here, nearly hit my break even point, and then ended up reversing and actually taking me out for a loss on that trade, which is fine because I have the direction correct. I'm playing my setup, it all fits my rules, and that's a trade that got taken out. So then we move on. We can see that price ended up running above that high here into a point of mitigation and saw continuation here to the downside. So our narrative of lower prices from the higher time frame perspective is still in play at the moment. The first target is always going to be the low in the fractal, and if we end up continuing through the low, then we always know that we can just continue selling with that intention. So then we move into Wednesday. Now on Wednesday, again, we have a very clear direction. This is initiation structure coming into the market. Initiation structure is very clear and easy to identify because price is not pulling back deep. That's one of the keys to understanding the structure that we're in. And when we're in initiation structure, you always want to trade with that same direction. It's never good to try and look for those tops and bottoms in the market because that's where you can end up getting taken out of a lot of trades. So we did create a fractal to the upside, but because my narrative is bearish, I'm always looking to trade with that narrative. So here we have a high, low, lower high, and lower low. Now, a lot of people might be thinking, well, that's not the high, this is the high. When I'm looking at price, I'm looking at the most recent highs and lows in the market based on the candles. I'm not looking at swing points. Swing points are completely different. When I'm reading my setup, I'm looking at current price. So this is a potential buy opportunity. Again, I didn't take it because I have a bearish narrative. And this is the reason why I don't take these sorts of trades when it's against the initiation, because you get tagged in, tagged out. So for me, this ended up being a sit out day in the markets. There was no selling opportunities that created fractal highs, which is my setup in the direction that I wanted to trade. Then we move into Thursday. So obviously we're down for the week, taking one loss. Our setup is still in play on the higher time frame. This is that fractal high that's now playing out to the downside. Like I said, after fractal highs are created on the higher time frame, this is where the biggest moves can happen in the market. The reason for that is we've seen manipulation. We know that the banks, for them to enter the market, they have to manipulate price before they move in the opposite direction. And what that creates is a whole buy to sell price delivery. So we anticipate the next move in the market to be the initiation phase. And that's exactly what we've seen here for the whole week. We achieved our first target, taking out the swing low here. So now our intention's playing out. So all I'm looking for in my session, like before, is to wait to see our fractal high printed in the direction that I want to trade. So here we can see before the session, price creates the low, high, higher low, and higher high. So now I'm looking for my continuation here to the downside. Session opens and price is still in that bearish continuation. So again, I just execute with my fixed stop loss and my fixed take profit. And this is one that ended up playing out to the downside. So those are the key parts that I'm always looking for with my system. I'm always looking for fractal highs and fractal lows, and I went through the logic of why. It's the bank orders that we're trading with. Those are the ones that are moving price with the biggest amount of capital. Our capital doesn't do anything in the market, so we're just following their moves. And fractal highs and fractal lows are following the big banks' moves. This is how they get into the market. They are the only ones that matter. So I've created my setup around how they get into the market. Secondly, as I went through, I'm either seeing my fractal setup before the session starts, or it's going to happen in the session. That's going to show the potential intention for the session so that I can get involved in that intention. And then the last part is how I'm going to get involved into the market. So I always keep my stop loss exactly the same. I'm always using a 10 pip stop loss. I'm always looking for anything between a 20 and 30 pip take profit. I adjust it based on what I'm seeing in the market. So previously I've been doing a 1 to 2 risk to reward. Now we're in different market conditions. I can squeeze more out of the market. But I always execute on the same formation of a candlestick. I always move my stop to break even at a specific point and then let the trades just play out. And this is how I make my trading completely mechanical. Every decision is already pre-planned in the market. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do any thinking. All I have to do is focus on flawlessly executing my trade process exactly how I've tested it over and over again for the probabilities to play out. And this is my session and setup strategy in a nutshell. I've made my processes so that decisions become very easy. I don't have to think. I can get right into the flow state and run on autopilot with the simplest processes. And this makes my entry process completely mechanical.